Welcome to Victoria Rumble Room. Lots to rumble about this week. We have another one of those historic moments. Amazing to some, but not really that amazing to people who've been anticipating this. Prime Minister Justin Trudeau has finally taken his figurative walk in the snow. He is turning off the lights. He's proroguing the Parliament buildings as he actually went to the Governor General and asked that we take a recess.
She has granted this request, and the House will now be prorogued until March 24th. I intend to resign as party leader, as Prime Minister, after the party selects its next leader through a robust, nationwide, competitive process. Last night, I asked the President of the Liberal Party to begin that process. This country deserves a real choice in the next election, and it has become clear to me that if I'm having to fight internal battles, I cannot be the best option in that election.
Well, that was classic Justin Trudeau. Do you notice he never really says anything is his fault or that maybe this is happening because the country is upset. The polling shows that the vast majority of Canadians want a change. They want Justin Trudeau to leave. He's saying it's an internal thing. The MPs are concerned. Yeah, they're concerned. They don't want to lose their seats. They see a disaster in the making. And it's taken him all this time. And it's taken him in some respects to the 11th hour because, he doesn't have very much room to move. In the 3-month period, at the end of it, he has to be able to get more money or the lights go off in Parliament. And when he brings the House back, it's the NDP who are already saying we are going to support a vote of non-confidence. So that'll trigger an election. You wonder how they're going to be able to fit in this leadership race and bring back the anointed Mark Carney, who I have to think, the former Bank of Canada president, I would think would have to be the insider on this over Chrysler Freeland. We'll have to wait and see. But it's fascinating, John, how this is rolled out, and we've been waiting for it, but it's not very smooth.
And also, as we like and hope to ease into 2025, because we've been partying our brains out and, all kinds of festivities. Okay, maybe the younger people have. Boom, Trudeau resigns. And, I watched that resignation speech. I don't think he wanted to resign. I still don't think he knows why people don't like him, to your point. Let's go back a bit, okay? Let's just go back a bit. This is the day when we get a chance to talk about the service this man has brought to this country and where it's going. I remember initially that debate. And, in that debate was Trudeau, Mulcair, and Harper, right? And if we recall at that time, very concerned about deficits, but our fiscal order, rightly so. Mulcair, generally the NDP would have embraced deficit spending. He goes, no. Trudeau goes, yes. And Trudeau becomes prime minister because the country wasn't yet fiscally, ready mentally. Let's go fast forward to COVID. He did a great job at COVID. We really felt, okay. Then COVID ends and Trudeau and this party collapse. And he hasn't recovered. And you know why? To a large degree, because they went from policy management to cultural management, as though we needed some kind of help as to what we should be thinking on how we conduct our lives. Get the hell out of my mind. I need policies around housing, healthcare, safety, borders. Don't tell me how to live my life. I'm sorry, but that's how that works. And so here we are, Trudeau's resigned. And we have Poilievre literally ready to be prime minister. And frankly, most of the country wants him to be prime minister.
Canadians desperate to turn the page on this dark chapter in our history might be relieved today that Justin Trudeau is finally leaving. But what has really changed? Every Liberal MP in power today and every potential Liberal leadership contender fighting for the top job helped Justin Trudeau break the country over the last 9 years, not to mention tariff threats from the United States. Oh, and another NDP Liberal carbon tax hike kicks in this April 1st. We need a carbon tax election now to choose between the NDP Liberal costly coalition that taxes your food, punishes your work, doubles your housing costs, and unleashes crime and drugs in your community.
So it's obvious Pierre Poilievre plans on running a campaign around taxation, axing the tax. It's caught people's imagination. But, you think about what's been mishandled by Justin Trudeau. And John, I know he was on TV during the pandemic and being very sympathetic, but they dropped the ball. They dropped the ball, the federal government did quite some time ago, in not having a lab in Canada to develop our own vaccines. It took us much longer to get the COVID vaccines than it did people south of the border all had their 2 shots before we had our first.
Yeah. I remember that now. Yeah.
That was a bit of a drop ball.
Yeah.
We also had drop balls on the international scene. Justin did not do well in negotiations with China. He went to China, waved his fingers at them about human rights, and they just shut the door. And then he did something similar in kind of almost a goofier way. He dressed it up like an Indian and went to India. And they thought of him as a bit of a laughing stock. And that really shut doors there as well. And that really hurt him. So on that front, internationally, the policies around COVID, he didn't do that well. He had some real bad inroad fighting with some of his strong female ministers like Jody Wilson-Raybould and others who got in crosshairs when he said he was a feminist. He didn't get along with a lot of the women in his own caucus, and that was a problem. And there were other missteps along the way. You could argue about different policies, but it just seemed like he stopped hearing what Canadians were asking for. He said, well, the federal government's not responsible for housing. He said that. And then within, a year, he realizes as the polls are plummeting that he better say something else. Yeah. And what about this crime? What about this catch and release stuff? Oh, that's provincial. That's provincial. The federal government should have a lot more to say about what we do with serious offenses in this country. The Criminal Code of Canada is a federal responsibility. So, I think Justin lost the plot. And, it's 9 years. These guys don't last much longer than that. It's the shelf life of most politicians. And the tough thing to watch is how politicians never seem to realize that. They all think, well, I'm doing such a great job. People should be so thankful. I've been working so hard. And I'm sure he has. But his time has run out. His meter has run out. And that's pretty clear to see.
Outstanding. I love the balance there. One thing that, look, today I feel relieved. Okay. Today I feel relieved. I'm glad he's out. And I'm tired of condescending remarks from him and his senior ministers about how we should be accepting their policies because they're right. I'm done with this virtuous preaching. Okay, fix the economy, fix our safety, fix our healthcare. Let's move on. Let's look at how this will impact our economy. How amazing amount of things in 2025 are going to be impacting us, including all the political maneuvering. Let's turn to David Schneider from Schneider Wealth Management and see what he thinks about all of this and how the economy will be impacted by all this insanity. Let's zoom him in.
And with us once again to start the new year, David Schneider. And David, it's so great to have you here. Such a big week in what's going on in the economy, but of course what's going on in politics as we have this announcement by Prime Minister Trudeau that he is leaving the scene. So right off the top, I'd love to know your thoughts on Trudeau's departure, what you think your business people are thinking about around this. Do they think this is good news? Do they think it makes any difference one way or the other? What are your thoughts all in all about what's happened this week in Canadian politics?
Well, I think it's generally very good news for the business community. It's extremely good news for people in the energy sector. I don't think you had a prime minister and administration so against certain industries and certain policies just didn't make sense at all. So obviously he's anti-business in some areas. He's really anti-energy. So those in Western Canada, especially Alberta and parts of BC, this is great news, even though it's going to take another 2-3 months before we see maybe some real changes. So we saw, the Canadian dollar bid up a bit, about 50 cents today, almost got to 70 cents. There's so many people that are short the Canadian dollar, so there's a bit of short covering going on. We'll see what happens, but the business world is competitive, and when you provide a template and policies that just don't make sense, capital doesn't flow here. So very, very good news to start really the first real big business day of 2025.
Yeah, so great to have you back for another year, David. And we really appreciate your expertise with business, the economy, and value your comments. However, let's look at how somebody down south is impacting our economy for a moment. That person, of course, being Donald Trump. Do you think that he's serious about taking on China in a trade war? And what happens to the world economy if this takes place? Come on, David, give it to us.
Well,
let's go.
He's a negotiator, and he loves using tariffs to get his points across, and he knows he's got a weak person in Trudeau, so he took advantage of it, bringing him down to his place in Florida, and then Trudeau probably adding on to the problems the way he talked to Trump. Anyway, this is the way he negotiates. Canada is an extremely important trading partner, and as you've been seeing the last few weeks, it's Daniel Smith that's been doing most of the communicating for Canada because there's a leadership vacuum right now in Canada. I went to my specialist on the currency and the tariff side. They don't think it's going to be 25%. It's going to be maybe 10%, and it's not going to be on maybe some significant things like our oil products, hydro, autos. He's really going to go after China, but he's starting to negotiate with us because he wants some things done in terms of the border and other things. And it's a good way that he gets things done. He's acting more like a king right now because in a couple of weeks, he can't be a king anymore. He has to deal with Congress and the Senate. So he's having a little bit of fun. That's Donald, and that's why he had the #1 reality show for a while. But, we have to get serious as a nation. And I think there's been a lot of commentators talking about that. We have to get serious, and we have to start doing things. And it's interesting, Daniel Smith and Premier Fury of Newfoundland spoke at an event in Toronto just before Christmas, 400 people. It was the first time Danielle actually spoke in Toronto, and she blew the audience away. At the same time, they set up interviews with all the American broadcasters. And as you can see, she's the one on the air now because she gets the point across. She's explained things. She knows how to handle Donald well. So I think she's going to be part of negotiations in the future because she does an outstanding job. And also Alberta has so much to benefit, also get hurt if we don't do things right. So it's really interesting, this sea change that's going on so quickly. And as Niall Ferguson's been talking about for a month, he uses the term vibe shift. It's happening everywhere. It's happening so quickly, not just here in Canada, but look at the changes that are happening in Europe as well, as a bunch of governments are either falling or have fallen based on this vibe shift that Niall Ferguson talks about.
It seems, David, that we've, as a country, accepted sort of blanketly that we should be going much greener, that we need to move into all these green investments in a green economy and green energy, which sounds really noble and wonderful, but it doesn't seem very practical, and it doesn't really fire up and keep the Canadian economy moving. What Canada has always relied on for our bountiful wealth and how things have gone right up until now is the power of our oil and gas, our forest industry, our mining, all of these resource industries, which have been condemned right by some governments, and really even the federal Liberals have really soft shoed around future oil development and future gas and natural gas and pipelines. They've really turned their back on it. And I think we have to depend on that for the foreseeable future. We can't think that suddenly this is all magically going to be replaced in a year or two by green technologies. Do you think with this next election coming that that's going to be foremost on the list of things that will be debated? In other words, if Mark Carney comes in, and I want to hear what you think about Mark Carney, because they're figuring he's going to be the guy that's going to run for the Liberals and get the mantle and run as the Liberal leader in this next election, former head of the Bank of Canada.
Right.
Is he going to be able to convince people that he is going to be able to run a solid ship in moving the Canadian economy forward and revitalizing the industries that have made us wealthy from the start?
Yeah, I think it's fair to say that Mark Carney has a great reputation in terms of the business community, in terms of its knowledge level, his positions that he's had. Even though, ironically, this past week, his climate change banking system, so many banks are getting out of his agenda on this green policies. You know, politics is a lot about personalities. The only thing I can share is he spoke to a group in Ottawa in April. One of my friends was there. He knows the political scene quite well, and he was absolutely blown away of just some lack of enthusiasm and any sort of excitement. And I said, so kind of like a Michael Ignatieff. And he said, no, Michael Ignatieff looks like Will Ferrell compared to him, like absolutely boring. So I don't know how he can do it in Canada when he has no personality. And the Liberals are so down on the polls. But a lot of these energy policies have also been from some policies of Mr. Carney. So I don't know how he backtracks on that. But we are a nation that needs to fund a safety net of our social services, our healthcare programs. There's only one industry that can pay for it, and it's our energy industry. And when you have the entire world backtracking on this vibe shift, going away from this European type of solution on energy and saying, hey, we want reliable, cost-effective energy, things are changing everywhere. And I think Canada's might be the last, and BC is going to be the last province to figure this out. And then what's been outstanding that's changed the last year is the tech sector. The tech sector is AI. AI needs power. And ironically, just in the last couple of months, Danielle Smith in Alberta has opened her arms and talked about strategies and policies so they can set up AI data centers in Alberta. Stocks like Capital and TransAlta went through the roof this past quarter for that reason. And then here we are in a province of BC where some entrepreneurs have tried to set up data center places and get the power, and the bureaucracy here doesn't allow them to do so. And whoever leads in this AI is going to be the world leaders, they say, going forward. Well, AI needs power. So if we're not allowing, we're not giving power, we're not going to have the opportunity. So what's really been neat is Silicon Valley has changed their attitudes towards energy. And that's why you see so much interest in developing power centers. Nuclear is going to be an option, but it's going to take forever to get those things going. So that commodity that's going to be needed in between for the next 2 to 3 decades is nat gas. And here we are in BC where they don't want nat gas power projects, but they're exploding in every other part of the world. And even China's building most of their autos now are nat gas powered vehicles. Like, it just blows me away. They haven't figured it out. So the nice thing about Trudeau leaving, it's really pushing some real strategy changes to the NDP government here, because they got to wake up or they're going to be on their way out as well. And that was a lot of rumors today. With Trudeau leaving, this is really putting the pressure on the NDP government here.
Wow. Hey, David, a little bit depressing. So I'm glad that this might change. I'm glad it will.
Well, but one thing you got to remember, the Montney in northeastern British Columbia is massive. It's a lot bigger than Alberta. We got so much nat gas to benefit from it, and to the corridor up to northeastern BC and to down south. But in the meantime, we're selling our nat gas at $2 while it goes down to the Gulf in the U.S. So they send it to Europe for $10 to $12. Like, it doesn't make any sense at all. The neat thing, for the positive thing for the viewers, is our resources are immense. And we don't want to be like the forest product industry where we have head offices here in BC, but no operations anymore because it doesn't make business sense.
Yeah.
Hopefully that changes.
Let me take you back to the Trump Canada thing. Okay. So, one of the ways in which we've exercised our reputation and our vision is Canada has been involved in these international organizations and has shown leadership in these international, and probably batted more than our weight at places like the World Health Organization, United Nations, International Court, right? Trump isn't crazy about these global institutions. In fact, we're hearing he wants to withdraw the United States from these things, which effectively will shut him down. What do you think will happen if he implements these ideas? What's the outfall of all of this?
Well, I think people are going to see this. Canadians look at American news more. They look at U.S. They look at American news more than Canadian news. No, I when I was down south, I knew the show was coming up, and I was saying, how do I explain to people why they would vote for a guy like Trump? And the reality is, the Americans down there, they just are sick and tired of these global unelected institutions dictating people's lives and running our economies, because it's making no sense. Even Fareed Zakaria of CNN, on his 6-minute speech on Sunday, just said he's had enough of these global institutions because it's not better for the standard of living. And I think the ultimate has happened in the last 5 to 10 years here in BC, where people can't afford to live. And these policies just don't make any sense. And the world's figuring that out. There's economies in Europe that are figuring it out, and major changes there. Look at what they're doing in Germany. Look what they're doing in Italy. And they voted that way. And they're just sick and tired of these global institutions. And I think Canadians are looking at that saying, it just doesn't make any sense. So we'll see what happens.
So I want to ask you, I have to ask you, because this is what you do on a day-by-day basis.
Right.
How's the market going right now? How are things with investors? Are they feeling good or bullish about the economy and about the international scene? Is it a cautious time? I mean, what are people thinking about in terms of their investments right now?
Well, once you go through good years like we've had this past year, they get a little bit too aggressive, maybe too bullish. There's still a herd mentality. We are now at a stage where the top 10 stocks in the United States represent 40% of the S&P. It's higher than ever and surpassed what it was in 1929. So there is a herd mentality where everybody's focused on about 10 companies. That allows a lot of other companies to be undervalued because they're not going into that other area. But people are still positive. I think there's a lot of excitement with actually the administration in the United States with deregulation, with the advancements on AI. And I think there's a lot of people that are excited that the United States is going to take a leadership role in one of the, not only the most important things, but the thing that's critical for us to have a future is government waste. We'll see how it goes. It's tough to deal with it in the United States. I wanted to give you an idea of, in DC, 92% of the people in the District of Columbia voted for Kamala. Now, there's not 92% Democrats in DC. It gives you an idea that those in these government towns want to keep the gravy train going, and they want to vote for the administration that keeps the gravy train going.
Some of the cynical people that we know around the whole Justin Trudeau file, and I can think of Kevin as one who we know quite well, suggest that he's prog for the 3 months because he wants to pocket the extra $100,000 he gets as prime minister. People are cynical about what Justin does. And he even got harassed. He was up skiing, I think, up in the Kootenays, and some woman started screaming at him and harassing him, which I think was terrible. I mean, the prime minister should be able to go skiing and have a holiday, and he's not on call 24 hours a day, 365 days of the year. The guy has to have a break. People get abusive, and I don't like to see that. I just want Trudeau to leave. It's as simple as that. It's not that I hate the guy. I just think it's time in a democratic system to change the players. And John, on that happy note, I want to again remind people we have a new website. Maybe you could talk about that a bit and how people can hook in and watch the Rumble Room through our various platforms.
Yeah, you bet. And just to put an exclamation mark on what you said, I feel better today. Canada was a leading nation on so many fronts during my lifetime, and I have felt during Trudeau's last 3-4 years that we have lost that. And it's time to get back to providing the world leadership, community leadership that we can do, and provide innovation and ideas around how to help people live their lives better. Okay, so let's go. If you agree with me or not, guess what? There's a whole bunch of ways you can do that. We do have a new website we launched 10 days ago, VictoriaRumbleRoom.com. Hey, Kelly Darwin of West Shore Web Hosting, thank you. You've provided assistance in building the site and the hosting. Much, much appreciated. On that site, there's an easy way to link to all of our platforms to see who you and I actually are, to get a sense of, if you don't know by now. And some of those platforms include Facebook, include Twitter, and they include YouTube. They include Instagram. They include TikTok. We're all over the place. Okay. So you can watch us. And if you don't want to go, if you want to just go to one place, go by all means, victoriarumbleroom.com. So in these tumultuous times, what a kickstart to 2025. I remain your Croatian sensation, Yanni Juricic. Thrilled to be hanging around with you, Robin, for this year. We're going to be busy, busy, busy. Hey, there might be even snow for Trudeau to walk around on the ground and reinforce the decision that he's made today.
Well, I don't think he's backing off on that. And John, just a note of caution: in 2 weeks' time, that strange little man down in Washington, Donald Trump, becomes president of the United States. He's already saying a lot of terrible things about Canada, talking about a 25% tariff. We'll have so much more to talk about. Until then, though, we suggest that you rumble on.